Morning, my students. I hope you all are good. And after finishing with our pulmonary volume capacities, now let's talk about a concept based topic, that is exchange of gases. I will say that this is just rather than just writing, try to understand this topic with me because this topic is more likely to understand each and every terminology between your blood, tissues, and alveoli. So, one by one, slowly, I will discuss this topic with you. So, let's start. As all of you now aware that which one is our site for the exchange of gases, that is the alveoli, because alveoli, they are the structural and functional unit of lungs. So they are the first site, first area, primary area for the exchange of gases. Now all of you have idea about that. Exchange of gases, whenever we say, we always discuss this topic in two parts. One is your pulmonary exchange. Now as you can see, that is the exchange, just the externally between that is your external respiration, between lung exchange, and one exchange, that is lungs and atmosphere, that is the external, and one exchange is at the tissue level exchange, means between your blood and tissues, and this tissue level exchange, it is known as the internal respiration. So when the exchange of gases is between the lungs and atmosphere, that is called external respiration. When the exchange of gases is between the tissue and your blood, that is called your internal respiration or tissue level exchange of gases. Now, before I jump into diagram or to schematic representation for your exchange of gases, let's understand first the term partial pressure. As we are talking about the gas, so same, every gas exert or put some pressure. So what is partial pressure? That is the pressure which is exerted, or you can say contributed. Now gases are always, there are mixture of gases which are present in our atmosphere, right? So the pressure exerted or contributed by an individual gas in a mixture of gases, no doubt that they are irrespective of the concentration of other gases, no matter what is the concentration of other gases, that pressure of that particular gas is called partial pressure. Means when you are talking about the gas, the pressure which is contributed by that particular gas, either if we are talking about oxygen, we will talk about the partial pressure of oxygen. When we are talking about CO2, we will talk about the partial pressure of CO2. So that partial pressure which is contributed by individual gas from the all the mixture of gases, it is called the partial pressure. Now this is, as you can see, there is a pressure of gases that is present in the atmosphere, right? There are so many gases are present in the atmosphere. Same, there is a gases which are present in your alveoli. So let's look at the partial pressure in the inhaled air. So when you inhale air, then oxygen is coming in and CO2. Obviously, I will not say that only oxygen is entering. There is the CO2 is also, other gases are also entering in your body, but our body has the capacity to only combine with the oxygen and CO2, right? Other gases, they released, they just thrown out from the body. They do not can remain in the body. They can't remain. So partial pressure of oxygen, if I talk about in inhaled air which you are taking from the atmosphere air, the partial pressure of oxygen there is 159 mm of mercury. And if I say partial pressure of CO2 in your inhaled air, that is 0.3 mm of mercury. That is the partial pressure of oxygen and CO2 which is present in your atmosphere air. Now these gases, where they will reach in the alveoli. So when they will reach in the alveoli, then partial pressure of oxygen, it becomes 104 mm of mercury, and your partial pressure of carbon dioxide increases. That increases up to like 40 mm of mercury. Why this thing is happening actually? Now you know that what is our tidal volume? That is 500 volume, right? 500 ml of air, which is our tidal volume. But out of that 500, only 350 ml is the volume which reaches till the alveoli. What happened to the rest of the air out of 500? Rest of the air that remains in the respiratory tract. The only air, that is only 350 ml amount of air reached till the alveoli. Now you can imagine that in your respiratory tract there is the rest of the air present, and here in this tract there is the exchange of gases happens, and when exchange of gases happen, it means now this air will have more carbon dioxide, and then there is the fresh air also which is coming inside from the atmosphere. So this fresh air which is coming inside, that is filled with oxygen, and resting air which was not exhaled out properly, that is having CO2, right? And now there is the mixing. So when there is the mixing of gases, the air which is already present in your respiratory tract, that has more CO2, and air which is entering, that has more O2. Now the partial pressure of gases in your alveoli changes, and when it changes, then partial pressure of oxygen which is observed in your alveoli, that becomes 104, approximately it is 104 mm of mercury, and partial pressure of CO2, it increases, that is 40 mm of mercury, because already there was the in your respiratory tract, there was the already resting air was there, which was not which was there, not either it was not used or it is not exhaled out also. So this air has more CO2. So when the fresh air which is having oxygen, it mixes with this amount of air which is having CO2, the partial pressure of oxygen and CO2 in the alveoli changes. So now let's talk about the representation of exchange of gases, how you are going to now understand it. So here I have drawn a diagram, a very simple diagram for you, that is as you can see here, this you can make this box, a larger box and a small box, right? And here we have drawn our alveoli. Clear? Here we have drawn our alveoli, and at the lower level we have drawn our tissues, because we have to watch the exchange between your alveoli and tissues and your blood. Now if we first talk about this, is this is our alveolus, and it is this exchange is at the lung level. So lung level is when the exchange is at the lungs level, that is called your pulmonary exchange, or you are calling it as the external respiration. And here when the exchange is at the tissue level, this is called internal respiration. So if you have marked that, then let's now understand. Now here I have drawn these lines, these blue lines, they are representing your heart. I'm not making here heart, all the parts of heart. We are making only those things which we need. And this is the partition between your right atrium, left atrium and left ventricle, and right atrium and right ventricle, right? So it is basically what we are representing with this, that is the blue lines, which I am making it little wide. That is this arrow, as you can see, follow this arrow. So I have marked here the blood which is flowing through the chamber of heart. So these lines, what are they representing? They are representing blood which is flowing through your chambers of heart. I hope this much is clear to you. So next, now let's see what is happening. So who is receiving the air? That is your alveoli. They are receiving the air. Now, pulmonary artery, the pulmonary artery, it is giving the which kind of blood? That is the deoxygenated blood. Pulmonary artery is giving the deoxygenated blood in the lungs. From pulmonary artery from your heart, it is giving the deoxygenated blood. Now this deoxygenated blood, what is the partial pressure of this deoxygenated blood? Partial pressure of oxygen will be here 40 mm of mercury, and partial pressure of CO2, that will be about 45 to 46. It somewhere it is in few books it is 45, and in few books it is 46 mm of mercury, right? Now, what is the partial pressure of in your gases in your alveoli? We just discussed it, that partial pressure of oxygen is 104 and partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 40. You cannot change these volume which are present in the alveoli. You cannot change these volume. The partial pressure of oxygen in the alveoli is always oxygen is always 104 and PCO2 is always 40. But now the deoxygenated blood which is coming to lungs, what is the partial pressure of that? Oxygen is 40 and CO2 is 45. Now what will happen? What is the rule? That gas, a particular gas, it will move from its high partial pressure to low partial pressure. That is the rule of diffusion, that the gases or a particular gas, it will move from high partial pressure to low partial pressure. Now just look at the oxygen. Oxygen in the alveoli is more, having more partial pressure, and in the deoxygenated which is coming in the lungs, it is having less. So now what is happening? Look at this arrow. Now this oxygen will be moved from alveoli to the blood. This is the blood which is carrying your deoxygenated, right? So now oxygen will come into your blood. And what happened to the CO2? CO2 will move out from your blood. Because what is the partial pressure of CO2 in alveoli? 40. And what is the partial pressure of deoxygenated blood? That is 45 mm of mercury. High pressure to low pressure. So it will release out from the blood and it will move to the alveoli, and oxygen will be entered into your blood. So now this blood will be oxygenated blood. So now your blood will be oxygenated blood, right? So in the blood, now your blood is oxygenated. So in the blood, what is the partial pressure of oxygen? 95. जब वो alveoli से ऑक्सीजन एंटर हो गई है, now the partial pressure of oxygen is 95 and partial pressure of CO2 in your oxygenated blood is 40, right? Where this will go? Now this will go into your heart. As you know that after oxygenation, now oxygenated blood that will move to your heart with the help of pulmonary vein. So now this pulmonary vein, it will send the oxygenated blood to your heart. Which chamber? Left atrium. Now then left atrium to left ventricle, and left ventricle will send the whole oxygenated blood to aorta. What is the partial pressure here? Partial pressure of oxygen here is 95. I am not writing mm of mercury because this will create a very messy condition here. So here oxygenated blood has the partial pressure of oxygen is 95 and CO2 is, how much CO2 is there? 40, right? That much is now in the oxygenated blood. Now your tissues, they are the high energy. Now they are under the active, they are active tissues, so they are going under active metabolic processes. So what is the partial pressure of oxygen there in your tissue? That is 20 mm of mercury. And what is the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the tissue? That is 58 mm of mercury. See, if you ask me that every tissue, no, see, every tissue does not have the 20 and 58 value. This value depend on the activeness of your tissue, that which tissue is how much active. So this value changes according to that, but for average we have taken, that is the partial pressure of oxygen is 20 in the tissues and CO2 in that 50. If CO2 is 58. But what is the partial pressure in your blood? O2 is 95, CO2 is 40. What should be now? What should be the thing here? O2 will enter into your tissues, and what will be move out from the tissues? Higher is the rate of carbon dioxide in the tissues and lower in the blood. So now this carbon dioxide from the tissues, it will move into your blood. इट विल मूव इनटू योर ब्लड. कौन सा ब्लड? ये जो हमारा ऑक्सीजनेटेड ब्लड था, इसमें से ऑक्सीजन टिश्यूज़ में एंटर हो गई. ऑक्सीजन इज़ एंटरिंग इनटू द टिश्यूज़, क्योंकि यहाँ पे CO2 58 था और ब्लड में कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड 40 है, तो मूवमेंट फ्रॉम हाई टू लो. सो कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड हमारी बाहर ब्लड में चली गई. नाउ योर ब्लड इज़ विच काइंड ऑफ ब्लड? नाउ दिस ब्लड इज़ deoxygenated blood, क्योंकि आपने इसमें क्या ऐड कर दिया है? कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड. नाउ टिश्यूज दे हैव रिलीज देयर CO2. दिस CO2 किसके पास जाना चाहिए? कौन कैरी करता है? वीना कावा, सुपीरियर वीना कावा, inferior vena cava. What they do? They will send this deoxygenated blood to the right atrium. Right? They will send the deoxygenated blood to right atrium and then to the right ventricle. But what is the now partial pressure of this deoxygenated blood? This deoxygenated blood which is entering into your heart now, it has partial pressure of oxygen, that is 40, and partial pressure of CO2, that is 46 or 45. Somewhere it is written as the 45 also. Both are correct. So here, who is taking them to the lungs? Pulmonary artery. So pulmonary artery will take them to the lungs. So this blood which is having partial pressure of oxygen 40 and CO2 46. This is I know this condition is little bit messy for you, but let me explain one more time very quickly, otherwise this lecture will be very, very long. Let's see that what is happening here one more time very quickly. So here I have made this alveolus, right? And we will talk about here the exchange of gases at the lung level or the external respiration. Here I have made tissues, and here we will talk about the exchange at the tissue level or the internal respiration. There we will talk about the oxygenated and deoxygenated blood, a big box you can make, and that small box. So here we have make the flow of blood in your heart. Here oxygenated blood, and this side deoxygenated blood. Now please follow my marker wherever it is going. So now, because we have to talk about the exchange of gases at the lung level. So now who is bringing the deoxygenated blood in the lungs? Deoxygenated blood in lungs. Who is bringing it? It is brought by pulmonary आर्टरी. पल्मोनरी आर्टरी इसको लेके आ रही है, राइट? और कहाँ लेके आ रही है? लंग्स के पास में. नाउ दिस डीऑक्सीजनेटेड ब्लड हैज़ द पार्शियल प्रेशर 40. ऑक्सीजन का पार्शियल प्रेशर क्या है? 40 mm ऑफ मर्करी. और आपके CO2 का पार्शियल प्रेशर क्या है यहाँ पे? 45 और 46, राइट? 45 mm ऑफ मर्करी. आपके एल्वेलाई का पार्शियल प्रेशर क्या डिस्कस किया था हमने? 104 फॉर ऑक्सीजन एंड CO2 इज़ हैविंग 40. हमारा रूल क्या कहता है हमें? गैसेस ऑलवेज मूव फ्रॉम हाई पार्शियल प्रेशर टू लो पार्शियल प्रेशर. अब व्हाट इज़ द पार्शियल प्रेशर ऑफ CO2? इन एल्वेलाई इट इज़ 40, इन डीप ब्लड इट इज़ 45. तो पहली चीज़ कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड alveoli में चली जाएगी हमारी. Now carbon dioxide will remove from the blood and enter into the lungs. What is the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveoli? 104. And what about in your blood? It is 40 mm of mercury. So now oxygen will come in your blood. जब ऑक्सीजन आपके ब्लड में ऐड हो रही है, इस ब्लड को क्या बोलेंगे हम? ऑक्सीजनेटेड ब्लड, क्योंकि दिस ब्लड नाउ डज नॉट हैव CO2 आपने बाहर दे दिया. नाउ दिस ऑक्सीजनेटेड ब्लड का पार्शियल प्रेशर चेंज हो गया. It is now having 95 mm of mercury oxygen and CO2 यहाँ पे कितना? CO2 still will be there ना. It does not happen कि सिर्फ oxygenated हो गया. Oxygenated का high रहता है, but CO2 still some amount of CO2 will be there. So that will be 40 in the oxygenated blood. This oxygenated blood now will through the pulmonary vein it will enter into your heart. सबसे पहले कौन रिसीव करता है? लेफ्ट एट्रियम, एंड देन इट विल बी सेंड टू लेफ्ट वेंट्रिकल, देन थ्रू aorta it will be sent to tissues. Okay, but now what is the, how does it exchange? This partial pressure which is in your oxygenated blood, it is having oxygen 95 and CO2 40. And what about your tissues? Tissues are having very less oxygen right now because they are using they have already used all the oxygen, so it is only 20. And CO2, because they are active, so they are releasing CO2, that is 58 mm of mercury. When your blood now enter into which is moving with the help of aorta, when it come to the tissues, that oxygen move from high partial pressure, that is 95 to 20, because high partial pressure is 95 and 20 is very less. So now oxygen is added to your tissues, and CO2 from 58 to 40 it will move out. It will move out from the tissues and will enter into blood. Now your blood has more CO2, so your blood will be deoxygenated blood. So from the upper and lower part of the body, vena cava bring deoxygenated blood. It will be received by right atrium, then it will move to right ventricle. Now this partial pressure, deoxygenated blood, it has the partial pressure 40 for oxygen and CO2 will be 45 to 46. That again go back to lungs for the oxygenation. This is how exchange of gases take place, right? If you have understood each and every point, it is very easy to draw this diagram. Go through this slide 1 or 2 times, you will be easily able to draw it. So this is all about today. One rule you always have to follow, that gases always diffuse from higher partial pressure to low partial pressure. So that is all about our today's lecture, that is schematic representation for exchange of gases. Next we are going to talk about the transportation of O2 as well as CO2. Till then, take care. Have a very good day.